My grandma actually used to own a travel agency. And I remember sitting there as a kid and just, a cute little couple would come in wearing Hawaiian shirts, wanting to go to Hawaii. And it took, God, it's adorable how long it used to take. But yeah, it's pretty incredible that I could literally show up to the airport right now, not talk to a desk agent, and just book it on my phone and walk right through 5 minutes later. And then I'm going to Hawaii that way. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Today we have Ian Soares on the podcast. He works in management and strategy with Singapore Airlines and is also a private pilot, which basically means he casually flies airplanes just like for fun. You're so cool, Ian. Hi. Thanks for being here.
Hello. No, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yes. So let's just I just want to dive right into it. We can talk about all the cool stuff that you do later, but I want to get airline industry heavy up front.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Let's talk about your role at Singapore Airlines. There are a few questions that I feel like people should know. People want to know, and I want to know. So first of all, how do you price the seats on a plane?
Well, so there's a number of variables that you look at when you're pricing. A lot of it has to do with where your competition is pricing their stuff. You also have to keep in mind the kind of product you're selling. So, you've got ultra low cost carriers like Ryanair or Spirit, which might be flying a very similar route, not to us, but in general. And they're obviously going to be pricing much lower because their product is very different. With us, we're more of a full service premium airline. So that's something to keep in mind when you're pricing. Just because someone is flying the same exact route as you doesn't mean you should be pricing at that level.
Not the same experience.
Not the same experience. So you have to keep that in mind. And another thing is the traffic, the people, the demand on that particular route. So that's something to keep in mind. If it's a very high demand route, let's say we don't fly it, but let's say New York to London. I think it's the busiest route on the transatlantic in that transatlantic sector. So pricing is very competitive. It doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be expensive, but it means that a lot of airlines are doing it. So they're going to keep a very close eye on each other.
Totally.
So on a regional level, because, we work in the Americas, we're not in Singapore. We kind of keep an eye on everything that's going on in our region. And then if an adjustment needs to be made to a certain route, a certain price, we'll make that recommendation, and we'll have to base it. We'll have to come with a bunch of materials to say, hey,
of course,
here's why we think this should change. Here's the demand or lack of demand. Here's what the other airlines are doing. And then we essentially say, okay, what can we do to change the price?
I'm sure you need an encyclopedia of data to be able to present that. Yeah.
So that's the big thing that I've recently been working on. And then another very interesting thing that goes on a lot is, let's say you have an interline partner or an interline agreement with another airline or a code share. So now all of a sudden your passenger is flying not just on your airline, but on another airline on the same ticket. And when an interline sector happens, an airline that is marketing and selling the tickets. So let's say you take Singapore Airlines from Singapore to LA, and then you take JetBlue from LA to Salt Lake City. So the passenger bought the ticket on us, and it's one ticket. So we now owe a certain fee to JetBlue. We call it an SPA. We owe a fee to JetBlue. So if you want to reduce the price of Singapore to LA, you need to make sure you don't go. Well, in theory, you need to make sure you don't go low enough to where you are essentially losing money because of what you have to pay to JetBlue.
Oh, is that so? Sense. The role of partnerships and alliances in the airline industry is a big deal. Is that what that would be considered?
Yeah, almost. So pricing is one thing, and then partnerships are the people who will negotiate that agreement.
Okay.
And they will work together with the other airline partnerships team, and they'll discuss, okay, for this route, we'll pay you this much. And it usually depends on what cabin that the passenger is in, RBD or fare level. It usually depends on those things. But they'll come to an agreement, and then all we have to do when we're doing this analysis is we'll take a look at that agreement, and we will see, okay, if we were to price this out, this is what we'd owe JetBlue, this is what we would, this is what our retention would be. And then we can figure out, if we need to go lower, how low we can go.
That is so cool. You are running numbers and doing things all day long. The real behind the scenes stuff that like an average traveler would just this would never cross their mind. It's cool.
But at the end of the day, it's to make it easy for the passenger,
Of course.
It's all about them at the end of the day. So whatever we can do to kind of make it streamlined and competitive and efficient, and there we go.
Totally. Customer first. So talking about costs, everyone assumes you'd make money on every single flight, but is there a situation where that's not the case?
All right. I won't use my airline as an example, but in general, yes. There certainly are cases where that happens. Using my last company, which I won't name, but my last company, it was a new airline, right? So you don't have this massive customer base right off the bat. So obviously the way an airline makes money is by filling their flights or by selling their fares. So at the very early stages, you might not have every seat filled. You might not even have half of the plane filled.
Yeah.
And from the people that figure out your break-even load factor for the flight, if they see it drops below that, in a situation like last company where it was so new, that might be okay, because you might go into this with the funding and with the knowledge that you're not going to make money for a while.
Yeah, the expectations are low.
Yeah. Well, and you're still building your brand. You're still building awareness. So it won't all come immediately. And I think you realize that. And then on a larger scale, on maybe a more mainstream airline, if they open a new route, there will probably be, unless they announce it way ahead of time and they do a lot of marketing, which usually is the case. If it's something that happens fairly quickly, they might have some issues, getting people on those planes right off the bat. But eventually you have to trust that people know your airline. They'll fly on you. If the strategy was smart to open the route, there's going to be demand. But yes, it does happen. It does happen. And there are usually reasons like that for it.
I was just thinking, hearing you say that, do you know, you might not know this, but what does it even look like? Number one, in cost. Number two, in logistics and hiring and all of these kinds of things to even start an airline. I mean, that sounds like the craziest, most unbelievable feat. I mean, no, clearly ballpark answers here. I just asked you this out of the blue, but what an obscene thing to try and tackle.
So using my last company, I think I was the 60-something person hired. I think,
Nice.
which is early on.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you're going to need a whole bunch of things. A lot of it is regulatory stuff. I know. Let's see. I know Virgin America. I had a couple friends at Virgin America when they were around, and they were working there for something like 3 to 5 years before they even did their first flight. So there is so much work to be done on the front end, right? And if they're not flying, they're not making money, right?
Totally. So many permits and stuff. I can't even imagine.
Right. And for a commercial airline, it's much different than if you're working with private jets, for example, because private jets, I mean, you need some infrastructure, but you don't need as much as you don't need the gate space. You don't need to deal with slots like some of these airports have.
Right.
So it's a bit easier on that side of things. But from an airline perspective, I mean, you need so much in place before you start flying. It's crazy to think about.
Oh my God. I don't even know what does that bank account look like? It's got to be,
exactly.
I mean, to build an airport, you need a minimum of $1 billion. To build an airline, it's got to be minimum $500 million, right?
Right. So you need at the very basic, right? You need planes. You need to figure out what you're doing for maintenance. You need pilots. You need a training program for the pilots, cabin crew. You need finance. You need your leadership team, of course, strategy, finance, marketing, operations, safety.
Crazy.
Probably HR.
Always HR, please.
Of course, it's and you're dealing with these huge moving things. So, there's a lot of eyes on you.
Liability team. It's got to be ready to go. Oh my gosh.
And you have the FAA right, staring at you the whole time.
Of course.
So sure
suspicious of you the whole time. Yeah. Okay, I can't wait to ask you questions about private, but we'll go back to the big dogs. So,
Sure.
do you guys at Singapore Airlines look at like events, like what events are in a city when pricing your seats?
I would say we have an awareness of what's going on. And that would usually be marketing, for example. So obviously a big one, for example, is, Formula One. So Formula One is a global thing. There happens to be a race or there happens to be a Grand Prix in Singapore once a year.
Yes.
And that's always something that is on people's radar. And obviously, since we're the flag carrier, we, there's a lot of stuff going on around that time, both with, hotels in Singapore, flights to Singapore, all that stuff. All right. So we have F1 in Singapore, right? Huge event. And obviously for those that want to go to Singapore during that time, there's a lot of things to worry about, right? You have hotels. You need to find like hotel availability. And then bottom line is the flights. The flights are going to sell out quickly.
Of course. Yeah.
So from let's say from like a pricing perspective, right? Let's say you have your airplane and you've got your business class and you have economy class and maybe a premium economy class. Within each cabin, there's different fare levels. And within those fare levels, let's say we have A, B, and C, right, in economy. And each A, B, and C corresponds to a different price.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
That makes sense.
A is $1,000, B is $1,200, and C is $1,500. So we allot a certain percentage of A-class fares to that cabin, a certain number of seats.
Yeah.
So as people buy the seats, A-class fares will now sell out, and then it'll go down to B-class. So it'll get incrementally more expensive as the cabin sells out. So really when someone looks and they want to buy a flight to Singapore, let's say around Formula One, they're probably going to be seeing those higher fares because those other fares have been sold out.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that pricing will do is, let's say they maybe will take a look, and not just for our airline, but for others, they'll take a look and they'll look at how the inventory is dispersed among the cabin to say, okay, we want to have, let's say maybe a smaller percentage of A-class fares available, larger percentage of B-class, and a very high percentage of C-class available. So they can kind of use that to tweak what it'll end up, looking like when someone goes to buy it.
Totally. F1 just
that's kind of a rough
takes
idea.
Over the entire world when something's going on.
Huge logistical
came out of nowhere, huh?
Effort.
It didn't, but it feels like it did.
I think it was Drive to Survive. I think everybody got into that show and now they're all Formula One fans.
Obsessed. I mean, I watched the shit out of it and I'm not even a fan. I just loved the show.
Yeah.
God, I used to work in film. And so watching that show and thinking okay, these cars are driving 200 miles an hour on, taking a turn. And there's 7 cameras, there's cameras in the car. There's cameras attached to the outside of the car. There's drones. There's cameras in helicopters. It's so fascinating that it's shot in such high quality and it's that logistically complicated to get that footage. Anyway, I could nerd out about that all day. So question, what innovations do you predict will come to the air travel experience?
Well, there's always a push to have kind of the best and most innovative stuff in the cabin, in the plane.
Right.
In terms of seats and in-flight entertainment and Wi-Fi. So specific to that, Wi-Fi, I think, is going to be a big one.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Wi-Fi we have already for all passengers on our planes. So that's a big thing. And we realized that pretty early on. I know JetBlue has it. Delta has announced it. United probably, I think.
Getting my Delta free Wi-Fi is just so sweet. Being able to work on the plane for free? Stop it.
So now imagine when you're over the middle of the ocean in the Pacific, maybe over the North Pole, let's say, because that's even more bizarre. And you have Wi-Fi and you can text your friends and go on Instagram and whatever. So that's weird. Cool, I feel like.
Yeah, it's totally cool.
So Wi-Fi is going to be a big one. The other one is and this is maybe a little niche, but lie flat seating on smaller aircraft.
Yeah.
So right now, obviously, if you take like an 8-hour flight and you're in business class, you probably have a lie flat seat and you can sleep and you feel well rested and everything. But some of our, let's say like a 3-hour flight, and you might not even need it, right? That's the big argument. It's like, well, who's going to go to bed on a 2.5-hour, 3-hour flight?
People will pay for it though. Like even if it's a 2-hour flight, they'll pay for it.
So that is something that is, I think, just coming over the horizon is converting a so-called premium cabin on a narrow body aircraft, like, what you'd take from Dallas to Florida or something.
Right.
Putting that kind of product in there. For us, we have a couple narrow body 737. So like what Southwest essentially has, but we put lie flat business class seats in there.
Very cool.
American has done it on one of their like transcontinental airplanes. They've done it. I think they did it on a couple of them. JetBlue has it now with JetBlue Mint, which is a very cool product. So I think, that might start to enter the industry. We'll see.
What does converting or upgrading or updating an airplane, like outfitting, what am I trying to say? Putting a new outfit in an airplane, what the hell does that look like? I mean, is it what I think? Are they? Yeah, a lot of time and a lot of money, I imagine. Yeah. Like ripping everything out and putting everything back in. Is that truly as simple as I think?
Yeah, kind of. But there's some other things that we would have to consider. So in terms of actually taking the seats out and putting them in, that's relatively easy since they are. I mean, there's tracks on the floor. They go into the tracks. That's kind of it.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of regulatory stuff. If you're going to put a new seat. It has to be signed off. It has to be certified, all this stuff. And then the other big thing is if it's a plane that's already in operation in your airline, you have to take it out of service now. And that might take months and however. So you have to figure out a time to do that, without canceling flights or without reducing flights if you don't want to.
Oh my God, a mess.
So the easiest thing would be to debut a new product on a new plane, that you've ordered.
Of course.
But at the end of the day, if you want to streamline your fleet, you have to do it with planes you have to take planes out of service and retrofit them.
How long
United is doing it. And
what's the lifespan of a plane? I mean, it's got to be, sometimes I hop on these planes that take me to Puerto Rico and I'm like, Jesus, this thing is from 1970.
To be honest, I'm not totally sure. Because there is such heavy maintenance and it's very well regulated and it's very frequent, the lifespan can be pretty long.
Yeah.
Whether an airline will stretch it or will keep them for that long is a different story, mostly because of efficiency. Some of the new airplanes that are now on the market, like the A350 or the Dreamliner, they're really efficient. And they're really a lot more efficient than some of the older stuff that you might find. So it's not that it's old, it's just that it's not very efficient anymore.
Right.
You're spending a lot more money on fuel on that aircraft than you are with something newer.
Totally.
But to put it into perspective, the plane I fly on the weekends, it's like a 1984 or something, and it's fine.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. But it's just old and it's not very efficient.
Yeah. Efficiency. So, as we're crawling towards zero emissions, it's so cool.
Yes, that's a big thing as well.
Oh my God, humongous. I was reading an article that said by 2050, that is going to be the case for every single new aircraft that comes out. Zero emissions aircrafts. Is that real?
Yeah,
I'm not sure, but that would be the dream.
I don't know. Electric cars were a hard sell at the beginning, but look at it now, Tesla's everywhere.
I know. I want to buy a Tesla.
I think the big concern is like the weight. A battery is heavy. So how are we going to do that on a plane with 200 people on board? I don't know. I'm sure it'll happen one day.
I never thought about that.
I'm sure there will be a solution. But
have you seen these freaking air yachts? You know what I'm talking about? It's like a concept plane. So It looks like a boat, looks like a yacht. Yeah, give it.
Oh, and it goes like Google. 5 feet above. It goes like 5 feet above the ocean.
No.
Oh my God.
It soars in the freaking sky. Yeah, Google it really quick. You have to see what I'm talking about. It's basically a boat that they pump helium into the blimp parts of this concept plane, and it lifts up into the sky, and it becomes a freaking... Like yes! How crazy is that?
So what's the point? Is this like for leisure, or are people actually going to like commute on this?
No, it's like a personal purchase.
Oh my God. This seems like perfect for like Florida spring breaks.
Yes, that's my first thought. I was like, oh my God, rich Miami dudes are going to buy this thing. So bad.
Yeah, man.
People are crazy. I was reading the article about that thing and I was like, I don't know if this is like, is this real or is this AI? And then I looked into it and I was like, oh my God, somebody owns it. Some like bajillionaire owns this shit. So crazy.
I think though, what you might see relatively soon is some sort of like electric helicopter type situation. And the purpose will likely to be to get people from like a city center to an airport. So, I mean, have you heard of Blade? You know Blade?
No. Tell me more.
Blade is like I think it's app based. I don't know. But it's a helicopter service. And I think they have some airplanes in there too. But really their big thing when they started was getting people from Manhattan to JFK. And it's like a 5-minute trip. And I think you can probably get it for like $300, maybe one way.
That's
and
it.
You go on there. I mean, yeah, but it's 5 minutes, right? So it's you can decide if you want to take a 45-minute to an hour Uber or taxi, or let's say the subway, I think goes, or you can just hop in a helicopter and it'll take you right to JFK.
One day when I'm all cool and rich, that's a great idea.
So imagine that happening, but now with electric helicopters or eVTOLs, they call them. And from, other cities, I know a couple companies have been trying that out throughout the world.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, those eVTOLs are pretty crazy looking. And whenever you like type it into Google, listeners, type it into Google, it's definitely worth looking at a video of these things. It's insane. You're like in a little pod. This guy's like just floating over a field and it's like, you can commute to work. It's just like the craziest looking thing. Oh my gosh. That sounds like some like Dubai shit or something.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think the hard part is going to be like regulating that is how many of these things do you want flying around in the air, and
how do they not crash
other air traffic? Yeah, because the airspace is already congested enough, especially in a big city. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I gotta ask. We're a travel tech company. How do you stay up to date with emerging technologies and like trends in the airline industry? And what impact do you think they'll have on the industry in the coming years?
I think a lot of tech or a lot of emphasis is going into how people like book travel.
I'll fly. What up?
That's something. And yeah, right. Exactly. and like, for example, the way I book a flight is extremely different than how my parents book a flight, or how their parents booked a flight,
Of course.
And I find myself just going on my phone a couple days before I need to go somewhere and booking a flight. And to be honest, it's probably a bit more expensive than if I had planned it, but the kind of situation I'm in is that I might not have the ability to plan something 6 months in advance because I don't know what I'm going to be doing.
Right.
But a case like my parents, for example, let's say they plan a vacation. Let's say they're going somewhere completely new. Maybe they want to have the advice of a travel agent or something like that can kind of advise them on where they should go. Mm-hmm. And they might or this kind of traveler might leave a lot of the research and a lot of the planning in the hands of this travel agent instead of doing it themselves, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I'm the kind of person, and I think a lot of other young people are, where they will take it upon themselves to do the research and read the reviews and, all this other stuff. And then they will actually buy the ticket themselves on either the website or on their phone or on the app.
Yeah.
Whatever,
on an app.
That's definitely changing. We're starting to put a lot of emphasis, I think, on the direct channel, which is the website and development of the app and making it essentially as user-friendly as possible. Because as these technologies come out, some are executed well, some have some issues.
Totally.
So really it's just making sure that whatever goes out to the public is, ready. Let's say
well, and like you said, ready. all the red tape, like how about Real ID? the concept of like being able to have your ID in your Apple Wallet on your phone. So when you're at the airport, you can do it the same way you do Apple Pay. It's like, that's been around for years and years and years, but they can't get implemented into the airline industry because it's impossible. And there's a trillion, hoops to jump through. My grandma actually used to own a travel agency. And I remember sitting there as a kid and just, a cute little couple would come in wearing Hawaiian shirts, wanting to go to Hawaii. And it took, God, it's adorable how long it used to take. But yeah, it's pretty incredible that I could literally show up to the airport right now, not talk to a desk agent, and just book it on my phone and walk right through 5 minutes later. And then I'm going to Hawaii that way. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, there is something like very special, I think, about kind of the build up to a trip like that, to let's say Hawaii or whatever dream vacation someone might have. There is a very cool process to it where you spend all this time planning it. You talk to a bunch of different people, you get feedback, and it really helps you get excited about it. So that is always something that in some way will remain, I think.
Yeah.
But for us, I mean, I don't know. There's just people are so busy nowadays, and air travel is becoming extremely convenient.
Yeah.
And I mean, I never thought I could fly across the country in a weekend to go visit friends. But I can, because it's cheap, it's affordable now, or relatively affordable. And, there's flights all the time. So why not book it a couple days in advance? It's easy. Which is not how I think it used to be.
Yeah.
So
that's okay. Wait, let's stop talking about the airline industry. Let's talk about you flying planes. First off, like, that sounds super duper fun. But like, how do you balance the enjoyment and freedom of flying with the responsibilities and regulations that come with being a pilot?
Well, I mean, I think the big thing about it is no matter what level of flying you want to do, whether you want to be an airline pilot or a military pilot or private like I am, there's always that initial training that you're going to go through, to get your actual pilot's license at the very basic level. To get the pilot's license, there's a certain amount of training that you have to do. And that's a pretty thorough process,
Yeah.
There's a lot of time you spend with an instructor, a lot of time getting familiar with the plane, and then all of the various procedural things that you have to understand and study. And oh man,
I asked Kenny if I could do it for the pod. He said no.
No, I was
like,
Florida,
can I get my pilot's license for the podcast? He's like, no, absolutely not. I don't blame him. No one wants me to be in charge of their lives on a plane.
But I mean, it's at the end of the day, people do it because they love it, and that's super cool. But there are a lot of tests, a lot of, I think to get the actual pilot's license, like when you're ready to actually do it.
Yeah.
And you've completed your training, you have to take a written test, an oral test, and a practical test. So the written, you can kind of take any time you want before the other two. But a bunch of questions, it covers everything. And you don't know exactly what they're going to ask you, but it covers everything.
Yeah.
And you have to get, I think unless they raise it, it's like a 70 or greater, something like that.
Yeah.
And then the oral test, you actually sit down with an examiner, and they have my guy, he had a big book in front of him with all of the regulations, and he's like, okay, let's start. And it was like 4 hours. I mean, usually they're like, I think maybe 2 hours. This guy, it was like 4.5 hours.
You got the thorough exam.
Man, yeah. And it felt very conversational, but really, I mean, they're there to make sure that you're a safe pilot. And you know what you need to know, and they believe you can exercise good judgment. But yeah, flipping through the book, asking all sorts of questions about a variety of things. And then once that's complete, you go for your practical test. You get in the plane with him or her, and you go do a bunch of maneuvers, a bunch of procedures, a bunch of emergency stuff, everything.
Oh my
And
gosh.
once that's done, then there you go.
Do you do like is like a flight simulator involved before you actually hop in a cockpit ever? Or is it kind of like study and then you go with an instructor?
I think at a private level, it's usually just in the airplane itself.
Okay.
Because they're available. You know, the other thing is when you go fly for an airline, they don't just have planes. I mean, they do, but they don't just have planes sitting around dedicated for training. Or it's very expensive, let's say, to go fly an empty passenger plane just for practice. Then you would use a simulator for that.
Okay, gotcha.
For the initial stages of your training with that. But no, for this, get in the plane, sit in it as long as you want on the ground. You can go through everything you need to go through in the cockpit to get a basic understanding, and then the instructor will actually take you up. And
that is so cool.
Yeah,
this might be kind of a dumb question.
It's a blast.
My friend is a military helicopter pilot.
Wow. Cool.
Is that different from is your pilot's license, or like, is that a different thing?
No, helicopter is separate. And I would love to work on that in the future.
Cool.
It tends to be a bit more expensive, I think, than fixed wing or regular airplane.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
How is that possible? It's so much smaller.
I mean, it can be, but again, I mean, and I don't know, I just, for some reason, it ends up the per hour cost, operating cost of a helicopter.
That is so interesting.
Compared to what you'd learn, the type of plane you'd learn in,
mm-hmm.
It tends to be more expensive on the helicopter side of things. But it is very cool. I mean, that is awesome.
Yeah.
The other good thing I'm sure your friend experienced was working or flying for the military. They will train you. They will cover your training.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
So that's honestly the best way to do it. Flight school is expensive.
The best way to do it, y'all. Join the military. Free flight school.
If you want it for free, then the military is not a bad option.
Speaking of free or not free, we all love knowing the logistics of something like this, especially since it's such a rare hobby. How much does it cost for you to take, let's just say, a day trip from Los Angeles to Southern California?
Okay. All right. So there's two ways this can happen as a private pilot. Number one, you own your plane. Okay. So it's yours. And
expensive.
The big things obviously it's a big investment on the front end.
Yeah.
But on a per flight basis, you're paying for your fuel and the fees associated with parking and landing and all that. That's actually not terrible, So let's say I owned the plane, and excluding the cost of actually owning the plane, like maintenance and insurance. Let's say I wanted to take it out and I wanted to fly from LA to Santa Barbara, from where I live, Santa Monica to Santa Barbara, right? Mm-hmm. So I'd use an app. Well, I'd use an app to essentially build the flight on the app and essentially get the weather and see how long it's going to take, all that different stuff. So that app will essentially tell me the distance. For example, let's say it's 70 miles, okay, direct. And I will pair it with the type of airplane I'm flying. And then it will tell me a bit more some details about the actual performance. So it'll tell me how much fuel I'm going to burn. So using that
cool.
fuel,
Stop it.
Let's say we're going to use 10 gallons of fuel each leg, right? So 20 gallons. So, and this is there's a lot of other things to consider, but this is the very basic just to get the cost. So Let's say 20 gallons, let's say fuel is $8 a gallon. So you multiply that and you get about $160. So that's your fuel. Okay.
That's not bad.
So not bad. Now let's say when you land in Santa Barbara, they're going to charge you, let's say a conservative estimate of, let's say $50 for parking and staying there. Let's say you want to stay overnight or something like that. So, plus 50, great. So that's about $210.
It's only $50 to park a plane.
A small plane. A small plane.
Why is all of this cheaper than I thought you were going to say?
Whoa.
Oh, sorry.
It'll get expensive.
Okay, we're not there yet.
So this is assuming you own the plane, okay? And, that's already expensive. So let's say $210 for this short flight, okay? That's not terrible. Now let's assume you don't own a plane, in my case. and you rent, or you're part of a flying club, which I am. So a flying club is kind of cool because maybe it's you and like 20 other guys and you all fly one or two planes, or you all fly a couple airplanes. And that's great because you don't necessarily own it, but you are contributing to it in the form that, okay, you guys usually have like a shared insurance policy. Sometimes you split the maintenance costs.
Yeah.
So let's say you're in a flying club, or you're renting a plane from, let's say, a flight school, for example.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then that flying club or that flight school, they're going to have kind of a per hour cost associated with the particular plane. Mm-hmm. The per hour cost usually includes fuel, which is great. So let's say the per hour cost of what I fly, for example, one of them is $165. The other one is $250 per hour. Per hour is assuming is dependent on the engine. If the engine's on, that's when that per hour cost starts ticking.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
Let's say Santa Barbara, one way, let's say an hour, taxi, en route, and landing, all that included. So let's say on the higher end of things, $250, right? So times 2 on your way back, that's $500 now. Okay. Now it goes up because
I knew this was coming.
Right. So, but at the end of the day, let's say I'm paying $500 when I'm renting, as opposed to $200 when I'm owning. At the end of the day, if I'm renting, I don't have the responsibility of maintaining the airplane and all that other stuff. And so that's a big difference. And you know, as a private pilot, if you're thinking about owning, you're going to have to think about how much you're actually flying, because at a certain level, if you're flying a lot, it actually does make sense to buy the plane and own it, because that's going to be cheaper. But if you're just flying, like, let's say once every other week, once every couple weeks, it totally makes sense to just rent, because you don't want to have you don't want to have a plane that's just sitting there not being used.
Yeah, totally. You become busy that weekend and you're like, I'm burning money. That is so cool though. Like, seriously, I don't know anybody who does that. I will totally chip in half of that $500 if you take me on a private plane trip.
And that's what people do.
Yeah.
Like, they go with friends and they're like, hey, let's say we want to go to Vegas for a weekend. If we all split it, it's cheaper than commercial. So why not?
God, that's so cool. That is so much fun. And you can, I could bring my cat, right? I could bring my dog and my cat.
Pets, alcohol. I mean, not for the pilot, but you can bring whatever you want. If it can fit, if it's within weight, then yeah.
No way. Yep. How cool. This is such a stupid question, but since you're into aviation, do you love Top Gun? Did you like the new Top Gun?
Yeah. Oh man.
I thought it was maybe the best movie I've seen in like 6 years. I was like, this is incredible. I was freaking out.
I think it was crazy that they did a lot of this stuff, in reality, like those air-to-air shots.
And they did it 10 years ago. Like, they filmed this movie so long ago. It's so crazy. Anyways.
Yeah.
Looking to the future, Ian, what are your goals as a private pilot? Like, just to keep having fun, or are there any new skills or certifications you're interested in pursuing?
I think it would be nice to get a CFI rating, which is your flight instructor rating.
Oh, cool. Nice. Share the skills, share the knowledge.
It's fun to, I think it's fun to kind of teach. And usually the people or the students that are doing it are fairly passionate about it. And that's always great to see. So that would be fun. That requires a lot of time. So, I will have to carve some time out if I'm going to do that.
That's a sweet answer. I want to teach people how to do what I love. That's awesome.
But yeah. And I mean, we need pilots at the end of the day. We need pilots.
Yeah.
So much so that airlines are now creating their own training programs. Like United has a great one, United Aviate. And that's great because they can just funnel pilots into their own airline after they're done training.
That's so smart.
Emirates does it too. I think we also do it.
You think ChatGPT will just learn how to fly planes out of here soon? Scary, but not impossible.
Yeah, I mean, there were even conversations about what happens if we only have one pilot instead of two pilots on a commercial plane, and that did not go down well, that conversation.
Honestly, good.
So,
like, we have to stop the momentum of this at some point and just say, like, okay, it's fine if it takes 10 years for us to roll out this, like, AI. This is scaring the shit out of me. I don't want to be on a plane where it's like, hello, welcome to your, no. If I don't hear a human voice on the intercom, I'm out. I'm out of there.
There you go. But yeah, I mean, it's super exciting, and the industry is always evolving. But I think for me, at least, in the next 5 to 10 years, I'd like to own a plane at least.
Yes,
I think that would be great, especially in California. I mean, it's always perfect weather, and besides the insane cost of living here, it's a cool place to live and to fly.
Oh my gosh! Well, that's an awesome, like, totally achievable goal. So that's good. It's nice for your dreams to be achievable.
Well, we'll see. They're expensive, unfortunately, but
I told you, just wait for your birthday. It's no big deal. I have one final question for you. You're on Travel Nerds, so you have to answer. What are you a nerd about?
Oh boy. I used to be hugely into cars, which I'm not so much anymore, but I still am. I still absolutely love working on it and driving it, especially in California. I have it's a bright red Mazda Miata. If you know,
nice.
Beautiful and super fun. So
a Miata,
yeah, you can always catch me doing something
like,
with that.
Isn't that what's in like Fast and Furious?
I don't think
just
so.
Picturing the car that's like in Tokyo Drift. Oh my gosh, guy.
Similar, but no.
That's really cool.
Again, and not so much anymore because the focus is like completely shifted to planes. But
which is cool.
Yeah, that is always something that is,
nice.
But I love it, and it's a huge sense of like joy, especially after you spend the whole week like working. Just go drive by the ocean or through some canyons.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man, it's awesome.
I just did the drive from, we were at the LA Zoo and then we drove to Malibu from there. And so we were driving through like the giant, just red and orange, like rock canyons. And I was like, this is insane. I mean, in Florida, you don't even have like a slight hill. Like you won't even see like a baby hill. And I live in Orlando, so it's like even flatter. But yeah, it always just like absolutely blows my mind. It's stunning. California is so cool. Like so many different landscapes, and you can go skiing and surfing, and it's amazing.
In the same day. That's the big sell of California. That's the big sell of California.
I know.
But I think just it's the idea that you can get somewhere completely different, and same exact principle as flying. You can get somewhere completely different in let's say a day. Yeah. So and the big thing about
that's what you're a nerd about.
I really
just answered it.
Yeah,
not driving or flying, but just like adventure.
Yeah. So I'll give you one better. With driving, I think one of the big things specific to that point was, okay, so we can get somewhere completely different in a day. How far can we actually get? So my friend and I, one of my best friends, I'm 24. We have driven across the country now three or four times, I think, in the past couple of years, from all the way LA to New York to LA. And despite it being a grueling 30 something hours, and again, we've done one of these nonstop as well. So yeah.
Psychos.
The goal of that is to, in the same day, as in being awake the whole time, right?
Right.
You start at the Atlantic Ocean in New York, and you drive until you hit the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
There is no crazier feeling. I mean, because you see everything. I mean, everything excluding Alaska and Hawaii. You see so many different landscapes, so many different types of people. Even when you stop for gas and you go inside the gas station, the person in one state is going to be completely different. And that culture and that lifestyle is totally different than what you're going to find another 5 hours down the road. Absolutely.
You're a nerd about travel. Me too. You're on fucking Travel Nerds.
There we go. indoctrinated.
Holy shit. Oh my God, that's funny. Yeah, a dream of mine, and this is a very achievable, simple dream, and I should totally do it immediately. You can just see the sunrise on the east side, on the east coast of Florida, drive across the state, and see the sunset on the west side in the Gulf of Mexico.
There you go.
In the same,
How long does it take you to go across?
It would probably take I'd say max 4 hours. It wouldn't take longer than that.
Oh,
not bad.
Yeah.
Totally not bad. Piece of cake. You can stop for lunch on the way.
Breakfast.
Boom.
Yeah. Breakfast on one side, lunch in the middle, dinner on the other.
But you did it big dog version. It's very cool.
A lot of Red Bull involved. Yeah.
Oh my God. I cannot imagine. Cannot imagine. Oh, I'm so happy you came on. You seriously just taught me so much. Almost every question I asked you, I had no clue what the possible answer was. For being 24, number one, you don't talk like you're 24. You know so much. You've lived a full ass life. Well, it's very cool.
But hey, I think we're all still learning, and this, at least everything I've kind of said about the airline industry, that is something I've picked up relatively recently, and it's learning in progress for sure.
Well, keep me updated on all your stuff, and when I come to California, like I said, I'll chip in. I want in on one of those flights. And I'm bringing the dog.
Absolutely.